most of the people who join Levership stay for 2 years, and 2 years of good focused effort. One major change a quarter, 8 changes over 2 years. You can have similar results to what you had, and at Bulletproof, the results were clear, right? We 2x'd the top line, and the bottom line way more than that. And so, without talking out of school, these results are what we're seeing time after time with these small companies.
Welcome to the Levership podcast. I'm your new host, Chris Johnston. I recently joined as the new CEO of Levership, and I guess with that job, I've inherited a chief interviewer for Matt Symes, one of our co-founders. But today, I think Matt wants to be the interviewer. Find a little bit more about me and my background and why I chose to join this amazing organization.
That makes for an easy first question.
Yeah.
You had a lot of decisions and a lot of choice, but why would you choose to take on this challenge?
I think the biggest thing that brought me here, it's a longer story and a longer journey, but I had the exposure, obviously, to work with the team at Simplicity in one of the organizations I was leading. And I was quite honestly amazed by the impact that we had together. And you often use the word co-create. And that's a really good word of how we came together and really helped the organization grow, provide clarity for the leadership team. So the short version is I wanted to do more of that. I wanted to help organizations get access to that kind of support, guidance, and framework. And and what you've done with Levership, I think, is really the path that can help us do that.
So, what kind of background are you bringing to the game?
Yeah, a bit of a diverse background. Started as an entrepreneur when I was young, just out of university. A partner and I acquired a motorsports facility of all things, and we operated a motorsports facility called Speedway 660 for 17 years. Learned a ton through that exercise. Had some great people. Obviously, a seasonal business, dependent on weather. Learned how to focus on what you can control. And to really let go of what you can't control. Took a few years, though. The first few years of rain delays and rainouts were a little challenging, but it was a really interesting business. I look back on it, and at the time, I thought it was so unique. I'd been a fan, but thought it was so unique to the business world. And then when we exited the business, I had this kind of moment where I was really struggling with putting on the shelf, is how I was framing it in my mind, putting on the shelf all of the skills that I'd acquired and thinking that, I wouldn't use them anymore unless I found a way back to motorsports. And it took me a few months to realize that a lot of the skills, and quite honestly, most of the skills that I acquired in that journey are very relevant to other businesses. We learned marketing. We learned how to deal with the media. We learned how to organize event logistics, operations, customer service, dealing with passionate customers, right? So there was so many things that if I look back, I have to be grateful for the time and the support, obviously. I mean, seasonal businesses often are family businesses. So we had great support from our family and our extended family that became part of as you would say, the village. But it really was an interesting time on that exit because I really was missing that business. But then I realized that I could use those skills in other businesses, and grateful from the perspective of if I look back and say, well, I could have done something very focused in one industry that was very narrow in terms of learnings. When in this industry, I had so many different learnings across multiple parts of a business, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're responsible for running a business, you have to become a generalist pretty quick, and I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs realize is if they don't understand the breadth of what's required to run a business, they generally get slapped by what they don't know, yeah. and then you learn a few lessons. But from the motorway, where'd you go after that?
My background actually was in IT, so I obviously followed that path as well. Was part of a regional cybersecurity firm, Bulletproof, here in Atlantic, Canada, that became a multinational cybersecurity firm. And that's where we met, obviously, right? I had the opportunity to lead that organization back in 2020. 90 days. My first 90 days was entry into COVID, so that was fun. And that's where we got to work together, and that's where I saw the amazing power of the the value that simplicity brings, and now Levership brings to clients. So it was a time of growth for us, but it was also a time of lack of clarity. We had a hard time keeping up. We had a hard time prioritizing things. I think as humans, we all try to start more things than we can finish, and we learned through that exercise with you and your team that we really need to focus. I mean, this is what it's all about: is choice and then focus on that choice, right? And that was something that really helped, I think, our organization grow, and obviously our leadership team gain clarity and cohesiveness. Like, we've talked a bit about this program and how it involves the leadership team, and that is something that you don't see in all of the other options in the market. And it was gold for us because we co-created our next 90-day sprint together. We had the commitment leaving the strategy session to go and execute on what we all agreed was most important. And before the program, or before the framework we were exposed to it, we all had our various lists of things that we were working on. And once we got into the program, we quite comically labeled those the cheat sheets, because there are all kinds of things that you could do. I think we often say we can always do more than we should, right? So it's about picking and choosing those things that are going to give you the most return in your business.
It was interesting as we went through that transformation. It was pretty clear. It was really clear that the old adage that organizations die of indigestion, not starvation, is so true. We used to make the statement with organizations that they weren't working on the right things. And while that was true, it wasn't that they hadn't identified them. For the most part, one of the 30 things they were trying to get done was the most important one. They just weren't giving it the resources. And so, sitting on the corner of someone's desk, getting done sometime when you have a chance, it just doesn't get you the results that you want to get. So, I remember certainly one of the individuals would always come with his cheat sheet, and he'd sort of have the mea culpa to start it. And that cheat sheet started to get a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. And then he started to recognize that, he was actually introducing chaos into the strategic sprints and not leading his team. And, on the other side of that, it was really good to see him recognize what that cheat sheet was doing. But that reminds me of what so many entrepreneurs do. They have 1,000 things to do, so they just sort of spew word salad at everybody around them, and they're running as fast as they can. And yet, with all the good intentions in the world, they end up sending so many mixed messages to their team. That chaos just creates an environment that you can't get anything done, never mind try and get a few good things done. If you look back on that journey, look back on that sort of 2.5 year journey, that transformation, what are some of the moments that stand out to you?
I think, as mentioned, like the top moments and memories for me were alignment with the leadership team. And as we started through the rhythm of quarterly strategy sessions, how everyone started to lean in farther as we went through the journey. Initially, there's always going to be skeptics when you bring in a new program, a new way of managing the business. But we were really in need of a formal management system, and I truly believe that this was the right program for us to be involved with. And as we went through, it was amazing to see how the various leaders in the organization continued to buy in, and that you have alignment and you have inspiration when the leaders are going and driving the program and the learnings on their own. In the early days, we're nudging a lot, right? We're nudging a lot because you go back to your day job and you get really, really busy with the chaos of the day job, and you forget about all the great things that you committed to get done in the next 90 days that were the most important when you're in the room deciding. So as that time evolved, we saw our leaders leaning in and actually pushing to the side all the noise and driving the focus. And that was one of the coolest things to see, because it actually, that's how you win. That's how you win together. That's how you co-create. That's how you double the size of a company. there's no I in team, right? It's about the organization, but it's about getting alignment and getting inspiration to kind of drive towards that common goal. One of the things that I remember being the most impactful, and it's a small thing, but it was so powerful in removing the chaos, was just the idea of a hopper. As entrepreneurs, we get lost in this long list of great ideas, and we chase squirrels all the time. And the idea of a hopper being introduced was licensed for our leaders. When someone from the field brings you a great idea, the last thing you want to do is say no. We can't do that. But the idea of a hopper allows you to say, that is a great idea. This is how we manage these ideas. Now we're going to put them in this hopper, and we're going to actually charter them. We're going to understand the value it could bring to the company. And that was an amazing exercise as well, because you think of a great idea and you get excited about it as an entrepreneur and you jump in with 2 feet. You don't often step back and take the time and plan out like a charter and understand how much impact could this have. And that was a surprising exercise because it actually changed the prioritization a lot for us, right? When you think about what is your biggest constraint or what are you going to actually accomplish in the next 90 days to move you forward, there's 1,000 things you could do. How do you decide? And it can't be because I like one better than you. It has to be about, we agree that the value to the business is greater in this one. We're going to jump into this one. So somebody brings you something back to the hopper. Somebody brings you an idea from the field. You said, that's a great idea. We're going to put it in the hopper. We're going to charter it. We're going to understand the value it brings to the organization. And then in our next 90-day strategy session, we're going to look at our further 9-day sprint, and we're going to bring some stuff out of that hopper, and we're going to get to that idea. I just can't promise you when, but we're going to get to that idea and then obviously that fosters eventually that idea lands on the ground and it gets the full buy-in and support. So the employee that brings it to you is fulfilled in a much greater way, I think, than you just chasing that squirrel and eventually having to abandon it because something else got in your way, right?
Yeah, David Allen is just a huge name in personal productivity, and he writes a book called Getting Things Done, and he has this someday maybe list. And really a hopper is a someday maybe list, right? I mean, you're going to trip over more things than you can do in the next week than you'll be able to do in 5 lifetimes. So how do you keep motivating the inspiration behind coming up with those ideas without forcing the organization down a path where it is overcommitted? And that's your job as a leader, is to be able to embrace all of those ideas and at the same time have a way to sort, sequence, and execute on the ones that are the most critical to the business. And it's not the same for every business, right? I mean, I talk often about a business being this little sort of organism, and it sits in, there's a world that's changing, there's a market that's changing. There's a way to deliver value to that market that is changing all the time. Processes, technology, new knowledge, R&D. So you're this little organism sort of operating in a field that's much bigger than you. And however you interact with the world, your market, the capabilities to deliver value, that is where leadership comes in. What are you going to do to move the needle? What are you going to do to differentiate yourself? What are you going to do to ultimately create more value for your client, to drive up gross margin per week so that you have more powder to figure out just what you're doing with this business in the long term?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was a great moment. I think one of the probably the most impactful moments beyond those 2 that I mentioned was just actually starting to realize the results of the time we spent together in terms of, gathering a leadership team. Because when you first start into this program, I think, your team kind of looks at you a little bit from the perspective of, we're going to get out of the business for 2 days every quarter, and we're going to sit in a room, we're going to talk about this stuff, and we're not going to deliver in the business for 2 whole days, especially when you think about like practitioner-led or technician-led businesses that are still, leaders are still delivering. That is a big nut to crack. But once you start seeing the value of the time you spent together and the clarity it brings and the momentum it's generating, and then you see the results on the P&L, I mean, it's hindsight 2020, right? Like, it's so obvious looking back, but so start to see those results was a major moment. I mean, we had a couple of, as you and I have discussed a lot, you try to understand your biggest constraint. As you go through the process, the first thing you think is your biggest constraint may not be. You try really hard to get to that biggest constraint, but the first one may not be. But it's going to help your business, and incrementally you're going to see gains. And then when you hit one that unlocks amazing value, and the team that's involved in co-creating that new process or new scheduling process it was for us, and how we were delivering on some of our consulting projects, the impact of the P&L was unimaginable. Like, I mean, we were curious about time cards and how could we deliver this quickly. Like, that's how impactful some of this stuff can be. And that was a major moment, because all that effort and all that time spent together was starting to get realized in the bottom line, which is, that's how you keep score, right? So, that was probably the biggest moment of all of it. But in terms of the tangibles that you can see on the bottom line, but I can't speak enough about the value of having your leadership team aligned. That is, to me, because you're thinking about that. That's team one, right? Like that's where you go grind and battle every day. So if you can get that, you can accomplish anything. Right?
I think most teams have some form of malicious compliance going on with their leadership team. They're sort of they're half in, and one of the things that good strategy is supposed to do is supposed to bring you into a room, align on the gap between where you want to be and where you are, and viciously align on what we're doing about it. And in that conversation, all of the potential ideas should come out, but they should come out in context of working together to make the business better instead of working against each other on whose idea is better. And that's why it takes 2 days. It takes a time in the room to really identify what you want to be when you grow up, and really roll around all of the opportunities, threats, strengths, and weaknesses in the organization. Get all those ideas out, and not advocating for a single idea, but being part of a team that really discusses all of the potentials. And I mean, what you'll find is the great teams don't remember whose idea it was. They don't remember. That's not important, right? What's important is that we're getting together. We're accurately understanding what's preventing us from being the company we want to be. And we now have an aligned commitment to go tackle that. And that's good strategy. Good strategy is focusing the resources on one or two constraints. And it was just magic to watch the 4 value streams that we had at Bulletproof start to get their head around how powerful it was to put all of the effort on the single constraint in the business. Too many people are chasing too many disconnected targets.
Yeah, and I remember the phrase that I would use during those days when you talk about not remembering whose idea it was. I would say this often: it's not about me being right; it's about us getting it right. And that was the summary of the experience for me, right? And talking about psychological safety with your leadership team and team one and stuff, and it was just a great experience. So after that, I headed off to a very large corporation called Microsoft. And spent a couple of years leading cybersecurity sales for Canada. Had an amazing team, amazing organization to work with. I had obviously an affinity for Microsoft when I was at Bulletproof. We were very much aligned with their security strategy, and we were building services around that. So that was a natural path for me. Got exposure to enterprise sales and the larger organizational culture, and it was all that it's spoken to be about externally, right? It was amazing culture, amazing team, but I had this draw that was kind of, I guess, more entrepreneurial that was pulling me, and of course you and I had stayed in constant contact over the last couple of years, and what got me the most excited about Levership was having experienced the framework and the transformation work that we did together with Bulletproof and Simplicity. I often wondered how could this is magic? How could we get this to more organizations? Because quite honestly, it's a major investment to do a full transformation one-on-one with Simplicity, right? The return is there, but there's only organizations of a certain size that can afford it. And when you started to explain what you had done with Levership and brought the same format into a cohort model to make it affordable for small and medium businesses, I got really excited about the fact that we could actually get this to so many more businesses this way. So, the entrepreneurial pull and what you guys have done to bring Levership to bear. And again, it's not a new service. I learned that you've been doing this for 5 years inside of Simplicity. You've taken a lot of the learnings over the last couple of decades and curated this program for small businesses that I haven't seen anything like it. So I was obviously really excited to be a part of that and get back into the entrepreneurial space, I guess, as well.
Well, you have to be half crazy to get into the space, but 17 years around a seasonal racetrack sort of set us up for that.
Yeah.
When I think about what we've now done with Levership and the potential of it really gives access to better ways of making decisions and faster ways of improving your business to a whole cohort of businesses that really couldn't afford it. And, they're generally getting advice from someone. They're getting some sales advice or some marketing advice or whatever it happens to be, but they aren't getting the opportunity to dissect their business and think about, where do I need the help most right now? And this is, Levership, good strategy. Whether you do it at Levership or whether you do it with somebody else, good strategy should be the thing that helps you sort all the other things. And, one of the biggest objections we get with small business is like, well, I just have to hire this person, or I have to wait till I get to the other side of this marketing project or this IT project or whatever it happens to be. Hey, look, those things are part of growing your business. But when do you step back for 2 days a quarter, half a day a month, and truly make sure you're still on course, right? It's about making sure that you are headed to where you want to be at the speed you need to be based on where you are in your market, et cetera. And I think with small businesses, they don't always get, well, look, my grandfather was a roofer who started a roofing company. Technicians that start companies, they generally know how to swing a hammer. But that's not what it takes to grow a business. And it's not what it takes to have a good, profitable $1 million plus business with a nice bottom line that allows you to be the company you thought you were going to be when you set out to do this whole thing. So, really excited to have you on board driving it, most of all because you've experienced it. Right? I mean, this stuff is almost impossible to evangelize if you haven't gone through it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that was a major part in the decision for me as well, is to having experienced it, know the value that it creates, saw the inspiration that it led to. Just really excited about the opportunity ahead of us to reach so many small businesses. So,
the thing that I'll close on here, and you hinted at the results earlier, but you're talking 2 years. Most of the people who join Levership stay for 2 years, and 2 years of good focused effort. One major change a quarter, 8 changes over 2 years. You can have similar results to what you had, and at Bulletproof, the results were clear, right? We 2x'd the top line, and the bottom line way more than that.
Yeah.
And so, without talking out of school, these results are what we're seeing time after time with these small companies. And that's the fun for me.
100%. I mean, you talk about people being too busy to kind of slow down and zoom out, right? That's equivalent to being too hungry to eat. But you can't see it when you're in it. When you're head down, grinding it out every day, you got to get this job done. You got to get to this next job site. You don't see it. And the idea of sitting in a room and not delivering in the field for a lot of small businesses is really a challenge to think that's a valuable time. But it is the most important investment you can make in your ideal future business, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, if you want to learn more about Levership, head over to levership.com. And we've got a lot of exciting episodes ahead. So we're really excited about that. And check us out. We got some good content, some good downloads on the website, or reach out to us, either of us on LinkedIn. Thanks.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to help us grow, please share it with your friends and colleagues. This would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening to this episode.